Alright, hello YouTube. We are back with yet another video. In this video today, we are going to be talking about Redux DevTools and Redux and how to get started using these tools. Redux DevTools is basically it can be a browser extension if you're working on just a standard like React browser app. Um, but then you also have the Electron side if you're using an Electron application that you actually have to install using the Electron DevTools installer. In this video, we're going to go over that a little bit. We're not going to go over it in depth since there's a lot of other things that we need to talk about pertaining to um, Redux. In this video, like I said, we're just going over basically setting up a basic Redux project. The current structure of the folders we are using is the exact same that we used in the IPC video. If you haven't watched that yet, you can go check that out. And the creating a basic Electron Byte application. If you have not watched the first Electron Byte application video, I would definitely recommend going and watching that, since you need that to follow along with this video. You don't necessarily need that. You can do this in your own project if you'd like, but it would probably help you understand it better if you use that same boilerplate just so you understand how files are going and where files are going as well. So first things first, we need to install a few things. So let's npmi and we can save dev these dependencies, these two that were, or this single dependency that we are going to be installing, Electron Tech DevTools installer, right? So that's going to be a development package that we only need during development, and we don't need it during a production build. Now we are going to npmi Redux. We are going to React Tech Redux and at Redux JS slash toolkit. And we are going to use, you can use either Immer, which is a very nice library. I really like Immer. Or you can use Immutability Helper, which just for sake of, simplicity, so not to explain an entire Immer library to you, we're just going to use Immutability Helper. If you'd like to go check out Immer, I'll leave that link in the description below to those API docs so you can check them out. I'll also be leaving in the description below the API docs to React Redux, or to Redux specifically, and Redux.js Toolkit. So let's go ahead and hit enter to install those. And I'm going to make sure that my project is run prior to starting, just to make sure that if we have any bugs, um, we can see them before we actually start doing our coding. So we can go ahead and close this. And let's go ahead and open this Electron file. So as I said before, so we need to go to main and then index. We installed that Electron DevTools installer. So let's go ahead and import that. I think it's called install extension. And then we need React developer tools and Redux DevTools from the Electron DevTools installer. All right, sweet. So what we need to do now is we need to register these. So we only want to do this when the app is ready. So let's find this app.whenReady function. It should just be in this project, this boilerplate, it should be just below create window. We'll go into there, and prior to, we want to do it before create window. Yes, so we're gonna do it here. Let's just do, actually, we're not going to use the React ones since we're only working with Redux. React, you would just add those in here. So you just do like, if you want to enable React, you just do those React Dev Tools, right? We're just going to do Redux. So let's do Redux Dev Tools. Then we're going to map out this array. And what we want to do here is we want to just say extension, since we're installing an extension into the extension, install extension. Oh my goodness. We'll do install extension and then extension right there. Okay. Then we do dot then. We can pull the value, which is a string, but we're just going to say name string. And we just want to console.log. We'll just say added extension name. Right. we'll add a dot catch just in case it does fail. And then we will also get the error here. And then we just want to console.log an error occurred. We should probably just do single quotes or double quotes there, and error occurred. And then we can just do error. Okay. Like that. Okay. Okay, there we go. So now we have it to where Redux DevTools will install. Now we should just say npm start. We might actually have to create the window first. Npm run dev, sorry. We'll see if we get any errors loading this. We should see something pop up in the console. Add extension Redux DevTools. So now we have this thing called Redux here, and this will basically show us our current Redux state once we actually get that working. Okay. So now that we have the Redux DevTools installed, we can go ahead and close these Electron folders and migrate over here to source. And let's go to data. And let's actually, before we do this, let's go to tsconfig, because we're going to need to add in some folders here. So let's do data /src/data/all. And let's go into data again. Let's create a new folder. Let's call actions. So with Redux, there's 3 total things you can have. You can have an action, you can have a reducer, and you can have a selector. An action is something that's dispatched against a store, and a store is basically your state. So you can dispatch actions against your store, and then reducers handle actions, and then selectors allow you to get things from your state. So we'll be going over all 3 of those in this video. So first we'll create a folder called actions, then we'll create one called reducers, so we can keep them separated, and then we'll create another one called selectors. Okay. So under objects, let's create a folder. Let's call this state.ts. Okay. And let's just say export class state. And we'll just say count, right? And we'll just give this a number. Okay. Okay. So quickly, we are going to go to tsconfig again. We're going to take strict and we're going to change this to false. And that should fix that. Yes. Okay. So now we have state done. We can leave this how it is and just close that file. Now, what we want to do, we want to come to actions, and we want to create a folder. Let's just call this state actions.ts, right? And there's a couple things we need to import from Redux toolkit specifically, since we're using toolkit, because toolkit basically just gives us a bunch of extra helper functions that can help us do various things. Let's go ahead and create action. And then we need to import no, I think that's it, actually. Yeah, that's it. So we just need to import create action, and let's create that action. So we're going to export a constant, let's just say increase count, right? And we're going to create an action. So an action in TypeScript, specifically JS, you don't have to worry about this. An action can take a generic as a type. So we'll just create the generic brackets here, or braces, and then we'll just type in our generic. So this guy is a number, is of type number, and then we can open up the action function. So what this is going to do is this is going to take a parameter, and this is going to take a parameter of an action type. So we are going to do an action type of increase, right? So let's do another one. Export constant decrease count equals create action. Again, we're going to type it as a number, and we are going to decrease. Now I do recommend typing or like, you know, making these a little bit more descriptive. So you could do like increase count, but for our case and just simplicity, we're going to go with increase and decrease. So from here, this has created our actions. These actions can now be called via functions within your components, which we will show that here in a moment. Once we're finished building the reducers and the selectors, we'll show all of that. And yeah, so we'll be able to count these then whenever this action here, so this action of type increase is called, you have to think of these as a lot like events and event emitters. So whenever the increase is called, it's going to basically quote unquote emit an event against the state, which then the reducer is going to handle this. So let's go ahead and create a reducer called state reducer.ts. In here, we are going to import a create reducer function and a payload action from at Redux.js toolkit. And we are going to import our state class. So we want to just do objects/state there. And let's create this function that's going to handle, actually we have to import one other thing. We got to import update from immutability helper. I can type today. And now we are going to create our reducer. So let's say handle increase count equals, and then the reducer takes two arguments. It's going to take one of a state, and we can give it state, and then it takes an action, and it's going to be the payload action. And we can type this as type number if you're using TypeScript. If you're not, don't worry about that. So our actions have two things. So you have an action.payload, which is going to be the value of whatever we give the action, right? So whatever value we pass through with this action. So the action will take a integer or a number as its parameter, as its only parameter, and then that'll pass through to here. So this is the value. And then it has action.type, okay, which is also, so if one of these is dispatched, this is going to be the type. It's going to be increase, right? Obviously, this will be formatted as a string. So in this case, this is what our action.payload object is going to look like, or our action object is going to look like. So let's first null check some stuff here. Let's say if action, we're going to use a null option chain here to verify the action itself is indeed there before we access any of its members. And let's do payload. So we want to make sure that something was actually passed through with this, so that way it's not undefined. If it was undefined, then we just want to return state. Then all we need to do is we need to return update. We'll type in state, since this is what we will be changing. We'll be changing our state object. And since state objects need to be immutable, which means you don't want to edit them directly, we need to create basically a clone of the state and then send that back to Redux, and Redux will handle the updating of the state for us. So we want to change our count value, and we're going to make use of this $set functionality of the immutability helper, and we're going to do action. Since we already know action is not null, we're going to do action.payload, and that's the increase count. We're going to create one more of these for the decrease. So I'm just going to quickly type this out. So something we should probably do here as well is do state dot count, plus the action.payload. And then all we want to do is use state.count minus the action.payload. Oh wait, I gotta add the set here. So now whatever value gets passed in here is what we'll modify our state with. All right, so now that we have both of these functions created, we are going to create a reducer, and we're gonna make use of the reducer builder that Redux.js toolkit gives us. So we're gonna do reducer builder, and then we are going to create a function body here. So this reducer is now an arrow function that's going to take a reducer builder as a parameter, and then inside of it, we will do the rest of our stuff that we need to do. So reducer builder has a function on it called add case. If you want to type this, feel free. I think it's like action reducer map builder or something like that. But we're not going to type it for just sake of time of this video, and there's quite a bit of other things that you have to do to be able to type it. So we're going to use the increase here. And what we want to do after we use increase is an even better practice, something you could do if you would like to, is do import or increase count and decrease count. And then just do increase count dot type. So if you wanted to do that, you could. That way you don't have to worry about that way you don't have to like worry about having mismatched types. Say you like spell this wrong or something. You can just do increase count dot type, and then that'll work just as good. And then for this takes two parameters. It's going to take the type as the first parameter, and it's going to take a callback, which is our reducer, as the second parameter. So we're going to do handle increase count and reducer builder dot add case decrease count dot type, and we are going to decrease or handle decrease count. So this is creating our reducer builder. Now any other functions you need to add, you'd create an action for it and then create a reducer for it, and you would just follow the same structure basically, and you'd add them in here. So now we're going to do export default, create reducer. And something I forgot to do earlier was create a default state. We need that as one of our parameters for the create reducer. So let's go back to the top here. We're going to create a constant default state, colon as type state. And all we need to do is we just need to add a count value in. So we are initializing the state that we declared in our object file earlier, and we are giving it count. So we're going to do default state, and then we are going to take the reducer builder. So as you can see, the builder callback then gives you a builder of action type, or of action reducer map builder. So if you want to type this, you do action reducer map builder. Yeah, action reducer map builder. And then you just type this with state. Let's go ahead and import this from Redux toolkit. And now this is typed out properly. So then you could, if you wanted to, verify, see what other things they have. They have a default case, which is basically whatever would happen if you had a default case. So if you wanted just one thing to handle multiple different things you don't have cases set for, then this would just be your default case. Matchers lets you just match actions with each other and then do reducers based on those matches. So what we're going to do now is we are going to add in the reducer here, since that's our reducer builder. You could even just call this reducer or builder, you know, whatever you'd like to do, or reducer builder and then builder. But yes, this is creating our reducer. So now we have a reducer object that we can then pipe into state. So let's go ahead and create our selectors really quick. Let's do state selectors, state selector.ts, and let's import create selector. from at Redux.js toolkit, import. We want to import state. And here, we want to import state from object state, data object state's fun. And that's it. So so we don't want to export this because we want to have just basic helper functions. So let's do constant constant get count equals state colon state, and we just want to return state dot count, right? That's going to get us that. Constant get current count equals create selector. Now a selector takes it can take an unlimited amount of parameters. We want to do get count here. That way we get the count from our state. Constant get state. State, just do get state, and then get count. So we apparently have to return state from here. So we'll just create two basically functions that'll just get state, get count, then we get the state, then we get the count after that. All right. So we create our selector state. I believe you can type selectors as well. So if I wanted to type the selector as like a state, I think we could. State number as like a return or something. It does not satisfy. Okay, so yeah, we don't want to mess with that then. That's like something, I guess that's that Redux.js toolkit will implicitly type itself. Oh, all right. So you could type it like this if you'd like to, because it takes a function that returns the current state. So it has a function that takes in state and then it returns state, and then you'd have the return type of the actual thing. So if you wanted to type this, you would just have an array of functions that would take state, state, and then this guy would then return state, and then you'd have a number there or something similar to this. Yes, yeah. So you type it like this. You have an array of functions that would eventually just return state object, and then you would take a state if you wanted to type that out. So now that we have our actions, reducers, and selectors done, let's go ahead and create our store object. So let's create a file inside of our objects folder called store.ts and import create store from at Redux.js toolkit and import state reducer from data slash reducer slash state reducer. And let's go ahead and type export or store equals, let's configure store. It's called configure store, not create store. So call configure store. And this is going to take an object. Options, this is required. Export constant store, my bad. No, this is going to take an object when we're going to pass it in a reducer, and we're going to do state reducer since it's a reducer builder. So this guy takes in a reducer, which is a reducer state any action, or you can give it a reducer's map object, which if you want to know what a reducer's map object would be, it would be like reducer's map or something. Then you would equal that, and then you would, inside of your main state, would give like state and then state reducer or something like that. Something similar if you were to use a reducer map, but in this case we're just using a single reducer, which is going to reduce it on our store. All right, so Now what we need to do is we need to go to components and go to app.tsx. Actually, we want to go to main.tsx, I'm sorry. And let's import a provider from React Tech Redux. So that's where that React Redux package is coming in. Handy. So now we are going to back out app and we're going to do provider. We're going to do store equals store. And let's do app / app. So now that we have provider, we have the store. We can just get rid of these. Okay. And I'm going to reorder this import. 1 second. All right. So now we have an app that has a store. Okay. So now that we've initialized our store using our store provider, we can go ahead and close these out. So now we want to come back to our components in our app file. So this is a functional component. I don't normally use functional components. I normally use class components. Now that's not exactly great because I know React is kind of transitioning away from class components and urges the ability to use functional components, which there's various other things out there for functional components with Redux.js toolkit, with like use dispatch and stuff like that. So for our case, we're going to be transitioning this functional component into a class component. So I'm going to create class app extends component for our sake of this video. So we're going to update our import from React. We're going to get rid of this use state hook since we don't need it. And we are going to do a render function. And then we're going to paste in that return statement. Okay. So now that this is here, let's go ahead and create our props interface for our app. So we're going to call this interface iapp props. And we are going to do count. And we're going to do number. We're going to have a function called increase count. That's going to take a, it's going to be a function. It's going to return void. And then we're going to have a decrease count. Going to basically mock the same exact signature as the one above. And there we go. So let's go ahead and add our iapp props to our component. And we're going to create two objects here. We're going to create one that's called const map state to props. And it's going to take in a state object, which is just our state. And then we're going to do constant map dispatch to props. And we're going to give dispatch. I'm going to make this a little bit simpler and surround this with a set of parentheses there. And that way the stuff's automatically just returned. So we have our state. We want to get the count from state. So we'll say count, get count. So this is the get, I'm gonna export that. Make sure you export this get current count from your selector. Then we want to go back to our app file, do get current count. We'll pass it state so we can get the count from the state. And then we need to basically create the definitions of these two here. And we want to do this, and we want to dispatch increase count. So this is our action, our increase count action. And we are going to increase this by count, right? We're going to do the same thing here. Dispatch, or decrease count, sorry. And count. So this is probably the trickiest part of the entire process, honestly, is just mapping it into your component. So now we're going to import connect from React Redux. And down here at the bottom where we export, we want to export connect Now in this order, it always goes state and then dispatch. So we're gonna do map state and then map dispatch. In the event that you only have a dispatch, you don't have a state, you'll just pass undefined, and vice versa. If you don't have, well, actually, if you don't have a dispatch, you just won't even do dispatch. Okay, but we do, so we want to dispatch that, and then we're gonna put in a second set of parentheses after that, and we're gonna type app in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and make these used in our function. So we're gonna destructure our props. We're gonna do count, and we're gonna do increase count and decrease count equals this dot props. Remember, if you did not convert this over to a class component, you won't be able to use this. You'll have to use the Redux toolkit's hooks for state and dispatch. I'll probably upload another video on that later, going more in depth on React Redux, but this is currently just a simple, quick learn this in half an hour type video. So what we're going to do next is we're going to come down to this button, we're going to copy it, and we're going to paste it just below it. Let's call this increase, and let's call this decrease, and let's do count code, and then we'll do count. All right, so on increase, what we want to do is we want to, instead of doing this, let's say increase count, and let's just increase our count by 2. And then we can do decrease count by 2 and save that. And let's do npm run dev, and we should have a working state. One thing we'll do to verify, we'll go to Redux here, and we should be able to go to state, and why do we have none? Okay, so apparently my Redux DevTools is being bugged for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure why. It just says I have undefined state. Shouldn't be, but I guess it's just bugged. So that's very unfortunate for the sake of this video. It happens every now and again. Yours might not do this. Mine, for some reason, did. I believe that is a known issue with the Redux toolkit DevTools. It's not exactly great. So now we have an increase and a decrease button, so we can hit decrease. This is reflecting that value that's in state. And then we have increase. So now we see that value moving in and out. What if I like, there we go. So I just had to close out and reopen DevTools for whatever reason. But now if we, so you see all these are the actions being dispatched against the store, which if I do increase, we see another one there, and we can see our count. So we can increase and decrease that, and we'll see it changing with DevTools. So yeah, now you've successfully set up a Redux application. This is currently using the Redux state. So remember to like, comment, subscribe for more content, and I will talk to you all in the next one.